I was Samuel's lover for 4 years. The day I died, he was getting married to someone else. Not showing up on my big day. What? You don't want to see me marry someone else? Or do you think throwing a tantrum will make me back down? Diana. I'll say this one last time, if you don't show up today, don't ever think about coming back in this lifetime. Later, he knelt before my grave and carved the epitaph himself. My wife, Diana, born on the day the willow catkins fell, died the year I loved her most. That was the first time he admitted he loved me. But so what? I was already dead. Chapter 1. If I died, you'd be free to marry her. Shouldn't you be happy? At the wedding venue, I floated next to Samuel. He couldn't hear me. His face was tense as he impatiently had his assistant dial my number again and again. No answer the first 2 times. The third time, the phone was turned off. 10 minutes later, he grew annoyed. He pulled out his phone and sent me several messages, each one filled with mockery and threats. Not showing up on my big day. What? Don't want to see me marry someone else? Or do you think throwing a tantrum will make me cave? Diana. I'll say this one last time. If you don't show up today, don't ever think about coming back in this lifetime. Whenever he spoke to me, he always looked like a man who held the power of life and death in his hands. Too bad. No matter how furious he was now, he had no way to unleash it on me. Because a few hours ago, I died. Mr. Song, the ceremony's about to start. You should go change. Secretary Sun reminded him. Standing upright with his tablet, calm and composed, Samuel paused, his hand frozen above the screen, his sharp brows drawn together. After a few seconds, he threw the phone to Secretary Sun. Keep calling. Don't stop until she picks up. Chapter 2. I don't know why, but I couldn't leave Samuel Song. Or maybe it's that in this ghostly state, I couldn't stay more than 3 steps away from him. I was forced to follow him onto the stage. The venue was decorated in an ocean theme. A massive blue whale hovered overhead. It was as beautiful as in my dreams. Only, the bride wasn't me. It was Ava. A year ago, Samuel had asked me to bring lunch to his office, specifically salt-baked shrimp. I'd been working on it since morning, and even cut my hand while deveining the shrimp. But the moment I entered the office, Secretary Sun stopped me. Back then, he had just joined the company and was still inexperienced in handling such situations. Mr. Song is in a meeting. Miss Liu, please wait outside. A clumsy lie. Even before he finished, suspicious sounds leaked through the door crack. Secretary Sun flushed red, his gaze flustered, clearly scrambling to find something comforting to say. I smiled faintly and patted his shoulder. It's fine, I'll wait outside. When it ended, Samuel walked out with a delicate young woman in his arms. That was the first time I saw Ava. Pale skin, large eyes, a high ponytail slightly messy, yet still radiantly youthful. Though neither of us was the only flower in Samuel's garden, judging by his usual tastes, he had never been into such pure schoolgirl types. So when Samuel told me he was going to marry Ava, I was a bit surprised, but I calmed down quickly and packed up that very night. Well, packed was just one suitcase. Before leaving, he was on the balcony, long fingers twirling through the hazy mist of smoke, smirking with a hint of mockery. Can't take it already? He stepped closer, the heavy scent of tobacco engulfing my senses, making me nauseous. Sorry, Mr. Song, I don't sleep with taken men. If there had been a mirror, I would have seen how awful my smile looked. Samuel's smile froze on his face. He grabbed my chin. So should I praise you for your professional ethics? To him, I was nothing more than a woman he paid for. Not sleeping with taken men, what a laughable excuse. Or is it that you still dream of marrying me? I lowered my head. I had thought about it, but that was all, just a thought. And even that, I couldn't admit. Seeing my silence, Samuel patted my cheek, his cool tone cutting like a blade. Diana, ask yourself, do you deserve it? Chapter 3. Samuel's Song wasn't always like this. We were childhood sweethearts for 10 years. When other girls accused him of only helping me with schoolwork, he'd calmly say I wasn't just anyone. And when I stained my pants during my period and was mocked for it, he punched the mouthy boy in the face. But now, I can't even remember what that protective Samuel looked like. All he had for me now was endless resentment. Diana, Why didn't you die with your mom? That was the thing he said to me the most later on. It happened in senior year. A sudden blackout at school sent us home early. And that's when we walked in on my mom and his dad in a disgraceful scene. A widowed woman seducing a married man. The gossip spread quickly through the neighborhood. Samuel's parents had a huge fight, and on their way to the civil office to file for divorce, a large truck overturned. They didn't even make it to the hospital. At the funeral, I waited outside Samuel's house all night with red, swollen eyes. He walked out in the early light of dawn, disheveled and worn out. And the first thing he said to me was, "Diana, I have no parents anymore. Are you happy now?" He held me, long fingers leaving scratch marks on my arms. Occasionally, tears fell on my shoulders. I endured the pain and kept murmuring apologies. But in the end, Samuel just shook his head and left with a tearful "I hate you." He vanished from my life completely. And my mother, unable to bear the shock, had a stroke and was paralyzed. What I didn't expect was that 7 years later, when I was struggling to cover her medical bills, Samuel would reappear and casually pay the rest of the hospital fees. "Diana, she has to live so she can see how much you suffer." Maybe from that moment on, our tragic ending was already written. Chapter 4. Samuel's ways of tormenting me weren't particularly clever, just endlessly nitpicking. He wouldn't drink coffee unless I brewed it 8 times. If the bathwater was a single degree too cool, he'd throw a fit. And if I showed the slightest sign of discontent, I could forget about getting any sleep that night. I already had sensitive skin, just a little pressure would leave bruises. Samuel never showed a shred of pity. He always did whatever pleased him most. Once, I fell ill and spent 2 days on 4 drips at the hospital. On my way back, I happened to run into an old upperclassman. He walked me home and chatted with me for a few moments at the door. Samuel had just returned from a business trip and witnessed the scene. "I still have a fever. Can you let me rest for a bit?" I didn't know why he was suddenly furious. I only wished he would spare me. For the sake of our years together, if you can still laugh and chat with someone else, I doubt you need rest. Besides, 39 degrees, I've never tried that. Might be interesting. Beast. I cursed him, deliberately resisted, while tears silently streamed down my face. Samuel gripped my face, his thumb brushing across my bloodied lip where I'd bitten myself. "Don't act like you're some poor little victim. Worst case, go max out my card tomorrow to vent. After all, trading your body for favors, that's what your family's always been good at." I glared at Samuel. His words stabbed right at my weakest spot. And yet he looked exhilarated, his twisted grin brimming with cruel pleasure. "Or did you really think my dad helped your family out of kindness?" My strength drained instantly, because on that point, I had no way to fight back. The sweets every now and then, the pricey gifts during holidays, they had long since become a source of lifelong guilt I could never shake, without me even realizing it. After it was over, I burned with fever for another 3 days, alone in the guest room, fending for myself. Samuel, just one wall away, only threw over a box of fever pills on the first day. He said, "Diana, don't die in my house. It's bad luck." Chapter 5. The venue played an animated reel of the bride and groom's love story. On a lush tree-lined path, a clumsy girl bumped into a daydreaming stranger. She hurriedly apologized, picked up the phone he dropped, and the moment she turned her head, he was utterly stunned. Not long after, they fell in love. He took her to Provence, where the lavender bloomed, and kissed her in front of the bell tower in Saint Remy. The guests applauded their romance, but that scene pierced my heart. This was exactly what Samuel wanted me to see. I had to admit, he always knew how to hurt me where it hurt most. Back in high school, a deskmate once asked me where I wanted to get married in the future. I was obsessed with dramas back then and blurted out Provence. Somehow that got back to Samuel. After school, he cornered me in the equipment room and seriously brought it up. Provence. Huh? Not impossible. But I'm allergic to lavender pollen, Diana. Remember to buy me allergy meds in advance. I blushed like a shrimp in boiling water and mumbled, "It's not like I'm marrying you." "Then who are you marrying?" He frowned, listing all the boys in class one by one. I couldn't admit the truth, so I randomly named some celebrity. Samuel was so mad he ground his teeth and went around asking who that was. When he found out the truth, he ignored me for 3 whole days. I secretly laughed behind everyone's backs. From that day on, every dream I had about Provence featured Samuel in a white tuxedo. I floated around, trying to get as far from him as possible. Eventually, I ended up next to Oliver. He was Samuel's best man and also our high school classmate. In college, he turned down a $5 million a year offer to take a break and start a business with Samuel. Without him, YL wouldn't be where it is today. Midway through the wedding, Oliver nudged the other groomsman, Old Lynn, and muttered, "Damn, Old Lynn, doesn't the bride look a lot like Diana Liu from a certain angle?" Old Lynn had helped Samuel expand his business empire. We'd only met twice, but apparently he remembered me. He smacked his lips and nodded. "You know, now that you mention it, she really does." Oliver sighed, eyes distant, as if reliving the past. "Old Lynn, you don't know how good those two were in high school." One year on Diana's birthday, Songbro biked 5 kilometers just to get her a limited edition cake. I really don't get how they ended up like this. Yeah, me neither. How did Samuel and I end up like this? Chapter 6. After the wedding, Samuel brought Ava back to their new home. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but there was nowhere else for me to go. Thankfully, he didn't seem interested in doing anything. After half-heartedly comforting Ava, he walked straight to the study. Got something to deal with. Go to bed first. Left alone on her wedding night, Ava clearly wasn't pleased. She kicked off her high heels, pouting. "Samuel, I'm mad at you." Aw, the kind of confidence that comes from being favored. I never dared express my emotions so openly because when Ava got upset, Samuel would coax her. When I got upset, no one cared. In this life, I came alone, and I left alone. No one noticed my disappearance. No one would remember who I was. Strange, isn't it? Even after death, somewhere deep inside me, the wind still held cold. Sure enough, Samuel patiently coaxed Ava a bit more. He was good-looking, and with a few soft words, the girl was swooning again. By the time he entered the study, it was already late. When he saw the chat window with no replies, his face darkened, but it wasn't worry over my disappearance. He was just furious that his kept woman had dared defy him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced restlessly around the room, glaring at Samuel's song, wishing I could leap at him and strangle him. But I wasn't cut out to be a ghost. My fingers passed straight through his body. Samuel didn't sleep well either. He leaned on the study chair, brooding through most of the night. At dawn, he pulled out a pill from the drawer and swallowed it dry. I'd secretly looked it up. It was a tricyclic antidepressant. Oliver once told me that the loss of both parents hit Samuel hard. Those years abroad weren't nearly as glamorous as they seemed. He was just used to keeping everything inside, letting despair and anxiety ravage him from within. He didn't spare himself, and he didn't spare me either. Once, after a fight, I slashed a deep wound across my wrist, staring at the cold ceiling. I called him. "I'm repaying you with a life. Let me go, and let yourself go too." All I heard on the other end was a cold laugh. "If you dare die, your mom won't be allowed to live either." He always loved to threaten me like that. My thoughts drifted back. I twisted out a piece of soaking wet clothing. When I looked up, a sliver of morning light had slipped through the window crack. It was morning already. Chapter 7. I drifted behind Samuel for 2 whole days. On the 3rd day, the police in JH City found my body. Samuel was in a meeting. Secretary Sun answered the call. "Mr. Song, hello. We retrieved a body from BH Park. After running a DNA comparison, we confirmed the deceased as a young woman named Diana Liu. We recovered data from her phone and saw that you're listed as the emergency contact. If possible, please inform her family to come claim the body." In front of a room full of clients, Secretary Sun burst in. Samuel's thick brows furrowed, his voice low and oppressive. "Don't you know the rules? Get out." Secretary Sun, drenched in sweat, for once disobeyed the boss. "Mr. Song, something's happened to Miss Liu." Clatter. The signing pen hit the floor. It sounds stark and jarring in the silent conference room. I turned to look at Samuel Song. He froze for a moment, then calmly bent to pick up the pen, muttered a soft sorry, and went right on with the meeting as if nothing had happened. That time I slit my wrists. I asked Samuel, "If I die, what will you do?" He had already answered. I'll go on with my life. What? You think I'll die for you? Chapter 8. Suddenly, I understood why some people, after dying, become vengeful spirits. For an entire month, Samuel went on with his life as if nothing had happened. Only occasionally, when passing by the small apartment where we had lived, would he stop for a moment. On the 30th day, the police called again. They said they had already caught the murderer, and if no one claimed the body, they would proceed with cremation. 11 years ago, Samuel had done the same thing. He went alone into the morgue and took 2 urns of ashes. The drawer opened, revealing my body covered in wounds, especially on the chest and between the legs. It was an unbearable scene. Samuel stood in silence, not saying a word, until an officer approached him to explain the cause of my death. "We're sorry." Before dying, the victim was subjected to 3 hours of inhuman torture with a knife and a hammer. The assailant caused fractures in the sternum, hips, and kneecaps. But according to the autopsy, the cause of death was shock from massive physical trauma. "What does that mean?" Samuel asked. The officer inhaled with difficulty, his compassionate gaze resting on my corpse. "In other words, she died from the pain." Literally, a chilling memory flooded my mind. For a moment, I could hear again the sound of the blade slicing into my skin. I flinched instinctively, as if those knives had pierced through time and space, cruelly cutting into my body once more. It hurt. It hurt down to the soul. The man gripped my neck, trampling on my dignity with every word. "Aren't you a whore? Then why are you pretending? Don't think I don't know what you do. What's the matter? If the rich guys can have you, why can't I?" I fought with all my strength, but the blood, mixed with tears, ran down my dry throat. I wanted to cry for help, but Samuel wouldn't come. I wanted to call the police, but the phone had fallen when he drugged me. BH Park was under construction. At that hour, no one would come. The night in crimson red formed the backdrop of a memory I didn't want to remember. Only the summer cicadas and the silent water of the lake heard my desperate screams. I felt like I couldn't go on. And even so, my last thought before dying was about Samuel. Would he feel joy at my death, or shed a meaningless tear for me? The icy water filled my body, and my consciousness dissolved. The question I never got to ask will never have an answer. Chapter 9. At the crematorium, Samuel paused for a moment. He placed a hand on the refrigerator door and took a deep breath. Why did that man kill her? The officer accompanying him pursed her lips. Her gaze on Samuel held an emotion hard to define. She remained silent for a moment before replying. The murderer's girlfriend recently ran off with a wealthy businessman. He was already furious from being cheated on. That day, he had a few drinks and heard someone say the deceased was the mistress of a millionaire. He said women like that don't deserve to live. When she finished, the officer turned to leave, but just as she reached the door, she seemed to remember something. She took a deep breath and couldn't help but speak. "Mr. Song, I don't know if you've ever heard the term dehumanization. When an attacker believes the victim has moral flaws, they tend to mentally exclude them from the category of human being. Then, abusing them becomes as trivial as crushing an ant. They feel no guilt, and don't need to consider the other person's feelings." She paused, her gaze turned pointed. So, who was it that made the murderer believe the victim didn't deserve to be treated like a person? That night, Samuel sat in front of the police station until dawn. Ava called him 10 times. He rejected them all. In the end, she had to turn to Secretary's son. "Mr. Song, please, come home." The secretary draped a coat over his shoulders, and that was when she heard Samuel's voice, empty and lost. "What was I doing the day Diana moved out? Why didn't I stop her?" Son didn't answer. Did Mr. Song really not remember? Maybe he didn't want to, because it was clearly written in his schedule. That day, he was picking out wedding dresses with Ava. Chapter 10. Samuel asked for the address and went to the apartment I had rented before I died. Since I never planned to stay long, the place was simple. The most valuable item was the phone the police had given him. Samuel went over to the nightstand and plugged it in. Just as it turned on, a call came through. "Is Miss Lou there?" Samuel was silent for a moment, then answered in a cold voice. "You can speak with me." The person on the other end hesitated briefly but seemed in a hurry. "Well, Mila has feline panleukopenia. Miss Lou left her at our clinic for treatment. It's been a month since she recovered, but she hasn't come to pick her up. Could you please contact her? Mila was a cat I had rescued from the street. At first, Samuel didn't want me to keep her. When I brought her in secretly, he was in the study reviewing documents. I warmed up some milk to bribe him, but without even looking up, he said, "Diana, there's only room for one beast in this house, either you or her." Since then, I had to hide to give Mila food and water. Fortunately, Ava had a fiery temper. When she found out about my existence, she came to make a scene. In the struggle, I fell down the stairs. Blood ran down my legs, staining my white dress red. That was our first child. When I woke up, Samuel didn't say a word. But the next day, Mila showed up at the house, his way of apologizing, in the only way he knew how. During our 4 years of love and hate, the only one who was always there for me was Mila. Sometimes Samuel would pet her too, but the moment he saw me nearby, his expression would turn cold. "Diana, take your beast and get out." Thinking about that tied a knot in my chest. My Mila, now that I'm dead, who will take care of you? But the answer didn't take long. Samuel called and asked Secretary's son to bring Mila home. Ava knew Mila was mine. She never could stand me. When she tried to touch her, Mila bit her. She cried and made a scene, demanding the cat be thrown out. But this time, Samuel's song didn't comfort her. He stared at her coldly for a few seconds, then turned around and began packing a few things. "I'm taking the cat. If you want to stay, fine. If not, you can leave." Ava had never seen him like that. Cold, harsh, like a block of ice. She froze, unable to say a word. So, Samuel returned to my apartment with Mila in his arms. He contacted the landlord and paid 6 months' rent in advance, clearly intending to stay. I didn't understand, and at this point, I no longer wanted to. I went over to Mila. She stepped out of her carrier, trembling, tested the ground with her paw, and suddenly dashed behind the curtain. After hiding for a while, she was surely hungry, but Samuel didn't know how to feed her. I had to float over to the table and, with great effort, push the box of cat treats to the edge. Clang! Samuel turned around. He frowned, but resigned, walked over and poured some food into her bowl. Maybe from wandering so much, Mila was still very cautious. She waited until he stepped away to approach the bowl. Samuel lay back on the bed again, eyes closed, rubbing his temples. Who knows what he was thinking? I didn't pay him any attention, because I discovered that Mila seemed to be able to see me. She looked at me curiously, stretched out her paw in the air as if trying to reach me, then rolled onto her back, asking for belly rubs. She never did that with Samuel. How lovely. My Mila only acts this way with me. I crouched down, unable to resist the urge to pet her fuzzy little head, but my hand passed right through her, as if I didn't exist. I smiled, resigned, and pretended to tap her paw. "I'm sorry. Mommy can't touch you anymore." But Mila was still a cat. She didn't understand what death was. She couldn't grasp how someone, being human, could endure less than a cat. She only wondered why I had taken so long to come get her. And after wondering, went right back to acting the same as always, rubbing up against me, until a sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. I looked up. I saw Samuel, a look of disbelief on his face, staring directly at where I was. In his dark pupils swirled a mix of emotions: surprise, pain, and finally, all of it dissolved into a soft question, falling into the yellowish twilight. "Is that you?" Chapter 11. Since that day, Samuel never left my apartment again. When he wasn't at work, he locked himself in the room, drinking. Over time, the insomnia returned. He woke up many times a night. Not even sleeping pills worked anymore. Eventually, he just gave up on sleeping altogether. He'd hold Mila in his arms and scroll through our chats. In truth, we didn't talk much. It was usually me asking if he'd be home for dinner, and him replying with a curt a simple yes. For 4 years, all we had between us was coldness and confrontation, nothing worth remembering. And yet, for some reason, even after death, I still dream. I dream of the 15-year-old Samuel, one hand in his pocket, leaning against an oriental plane tree under the colonnade. When he saw me coming, he'd unwrap an orange candy and smile as he popped it into my mouth. If you eat my candy, then you're mine. I also dream of the 25-year-old Samuel, flawless in a suit, seated at a business dinner, deliberately, in front of me. He told a client, "Our dear Chan likes her. You can keep her for a few days." The memories surface, blurry between reality and imagination, between what happened and what was dreamed. Who was right and who wasn't, no longer matters. It wasn't long before Ava lost her patience. Unable to find Samuel, she went straight to his office at the company. Secretary's son took her in and then quietly returned to her desk. At first, Ava tried to speak calmly, but he, with his usual distant tone, asked her to leave. She had just graduated, barely worked, and had never been bruised by the real world. Before the marriage, Samuel had indulged her every whim, receiving nothing but coldness again and again. The young woman finally snapped. She screamed with all her might, "Samuel, that woman is already dead. I'm the one by your side now. Me. You haven't come home in 2 months. Even if you're just using me as a stand-in, even if you're just trying to take revenge on Diana through me, can't you at least look at me once? Just once? Am I worth so little that you can't even give me that bare minimum? Am I really so unworthy of your love?" She looked like a child who couldn't get her candy, unleashing her fury with no restraint. But what she didn't understand was that only beloved children have the right to throw tantrums. Samuel kept his eyes on the documents. When Ava was done shouting, he called for Secretary's son, "Take her home." Punching the air is the most frustrating feeling. The anger that had built up for so long exploded, burning until all reason was consumed. Suddenly, Ava smiled, a twisted, sarcastic smile spread across her delicate face, desperately searching for a way out. No wonder Diana didn't want to live anymore. "Is this how you treated her too?" At the sound of my name, Samuel finally looked up, his icy gaze fixed on Ava. She didn't flinch. "Do you really believe someone else killed Diana? Let me tell you, that's not what happened. You were the one who killed her. Your selfishness, your coldness, your senseless revenge made her lose the will to live." Before she finished, Ava pulled a recorder from her bag. She turned it on and threw it hard at Samuel. At first, she tried to ask for help. She kept screaming something like "saw, mule." It was driving me mad. Then a piece of paper fell from her purse. When she saw it, she stopped resisting. "What paper?" "I think it was a wedding invitation or something." Then she started insulting me, using the ugliest words. I got so angry. I lost control. But later, when you told me about her situation, I thought maybe she didn't want to live anymore. That she provoked me on purpose, so I'd help her die. The recording ended. Samuel clasped his hands. They trembled slightly, as if he were holding back immense pain, but his shadowed eyes never left Ava for a second. After a long silence, he pushed his chair back and stood up, walking step by step toward her. Perhaps the severity in his gaze was too intense, because Ava instinctively stepped back. That step caught her heel in the carpet. She fell backward. Samuel let out a cold laugh. "Was this your purpose in coming to find me?" Ava suddenly fell silent. She pressed her lips together tightly. That wasn't it at all. She just wanted her husband back. That man who, even with fake affection, gave her everything she asked for. Even if it meant fighting, even if it meant getting hurt, she wanted him to look at her again, just like I once did. Samuel laughed again. He crouched down and, with surprising gentleness, tucked Ava's bangs behind her ear. But his words were venomous. "Like a snake. If you already knew why I married you, why would you come and test my limits? You wanted money. I just needed a partner to play a part. From the beginning, we were only supposed to take what we needed. Isn't that right?" Ava turned pale. What are you saying?" Samuel stood up. He pulled out a handkerchief and wiped the hand that had touched her with visible disgust. "Let's get a divorce. We'll sign the papers tomorrow." Chapter 12. In the 2nd month after my death, Samuel got divorced. Ava begged him at the civil registry, crying without a shred of dignity, but he didn't even glance at her. One by one, He peeled her fingers off his hand with the same disdain used to brush off trash. There are things I don't want to repeat twice. Eva, eyes brimming with tears, froze in place, no longer daring to insist. She also knew that if she kept making a scene, she'd end up losing even what she still had. I floated in the air, watching this absurd scene with indifference. So for Samuel's song, even marriage had just been another tool to take revenge on me. Something he could treat like a game. How pathetic. And how laughable. Of course, that wasn't the only scene I found absurd. That very night, my Uncle Sebastian broke the lock to my apartment. He told the landlord he was there to collect my ashes to take them back to the village. But the first thing he did upon entering was rummage through the cabinets. His son Gabriel was with him. Dad, are you sure this is going to work? Even if Diana Lou is dead, her mom's still alive. Are we really going to get the money? Sebastian smacked him on the head. What do you know? When your aunt was paralyzed, who took her to the hospital? If it weren't for me, would Diana even have a mother now? Besides, she was an only child. Her family's finished, even if she hadn't died. Just for me giving the Sebastian family an heir. They owe me that inheritance. Come on, look for the property deed. Gabriel clicked his tongue but obeyed. Ever since my mother became bedridden, those two had pressured me nonstop to help Gabriel buy a place. They even sent people to harass me, but I had always been on guard, never giving in. I never imagined they would still dare to come back, and they certainly didn't imagine they'd be caught immediately. Samuel appeared at the door. He took in the chaos they'd caused and, without mercy, called the police. After finishing the report, it was already night when he left the station. The moonlight spilled just like that time we walked hand in hand. Carefully, under the starry sky, Samuel was crossing the pedestrian bridge alone. His tall, upright back was soaked in exhaustion. Thinking of that despicable father and son pair, he sighed, something he rarely did. All these years, you really had a hard life, didn't you? After my death, Samuel finally said a sentence, in my defense. I guess I really wasn't a girl favored by the heavens. Because I was a girl, my father abandoned me at birth and started another family. My mother, desperate for support, saw me as a burden. In her blind chase for happiness, she chose the wrong path, and left me with 10 years of disgrace on my shoulders. And my uncle, who pretended to care for me, was only ever trying to squeeze out every last drop of value he could. In this world, no one loved me, except Samuel, but that love was like a one-day flower. It bloomed, and withered far too soon. I sat on the railing, lost. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what. Chapter 13. In the end, it was Oliver who found Samuel at a bar. In my memory, Samuel was always a man of restraint. Rarely did he ever drink himself into a mess like this. He couldn't even walk straight but still insisted on going back to the apartment. Oliver had no choice but to drag him, half carrying him, all the way back to the bed. Late at night, he looked at the drunken man and sighed silently. If only you'd known this day would come, why did you do what you did? I followed them home. Mila saw me and started circling me again, rubbing against me, licking me, reaching out her paws, asking to be held. I gently tapped her nose as usual and whispered secrets in her ear. Before long, Mila rolled over, exposing her belly. Such a normal action, yet to Samuel, it meant something else. He suddenly rushed over, scooped her up into his arms, and under my stunned gaze, tears streamed down his face. You hate me this much? Hate me enough to let only Mila see you? Diana, you're so cruel. Diana. Diana. I almost laughed. I'm already dead. What's the point of putting on this display? Who is it for? I floated coldly to the cabinet, watching grief devour Samuel's song like a tidal wave. He kept repeating the same line. Diana, do you really hate me that much? I stared at him blankly. Shouldn't I hate you? Of course I should. You trampled my love, shattered my dignity, just like back in senior year, after you dropped out and my mom had her stroke. I was often locked in the bathroom utility room or storage closet. My clothes were always soaked, my hair hacked into a jagged mess. The boys would dig out my pads and stick them to my desk, mocking me as the daughter of a homewrecker. But I didn't even know what had happened. I had to endure all that malice. and wasn't even allowed to fight back. From then on, I hated everyone. But shouldn't Samuel hate me too? Of course he should. My mother destroyed his family, made him dependent on others, left him sleepless and depressed. If it were me, I'd hate too. Blame is human nature. But what I can't understand is, now that I'm truly gone, now that I'll never appear before him again to remind him of the past, no more arguments, no more sharp words cutting into each other like knives. Then Samuel, why are you still so sad? Chapter 14. I don't know why the heavens decided that, even after death, I should remain by Samuel's side. But the good news was that my silhouette had started to fade. I was glad at the thought of finally being set free. Yet when I saw Mila obediently eating her food, a sharp ache pierced my heart. In this world, the one thing truly insurmountable is death. Every minute of that countdown felt like torture in slow motion. Not long after, the hospital called. They said my mother couldn't hold on any longer. A nurse recounted that someone named Gabriel had gone to see her. Through tears, he told her about my death. That very afternoon, the line on the heart monitor went flat. Multiple organ failure. No possible treatment. She, who had been bedridden for 11 years, the person who gave me the most love and also brought me the most hatred, had finally reached her end. I don't know how to describe what I felt. All I knew was that in this world, there was no longer any harbor left for me to anchor in. I clenched my fists, released them, a whole life spent running nonstop, and in the end, I held on to nothing. I watched the doctors disconnect the machines, felt my soul grow even fainter, while the cleaning staff tidied up. Samuel happened to overhear a conversation. Turns out, the ones who had spread the rumor that I was the mistress of a millionaire were Sebastian and his son. I remembered. The day the worst happened to me, they had come asking for money. When I refused to be their bank, Sebastian shouted insults at me from below the building. By chance, that drunken man passed by, heard the shouting, and felt a desire to kill. Later, Gabriel saw the murderer's photo on the news. He understood everything. Racked with guilt, he went to my mother to confess. I was so furious my vision burned red. But I no longer had a body. The greatest revenge I could offer was to nudge a stone, make them trip on their path. In the end, it was Samuel who buried my mother and me together in the cemetery. It's strange, such a large person, and when dead, all that's left fits into a little box of ashes. Samuel's song engraved something on my tombstone. It took him a long time. So focused, I didn't have the patience to watch. So I turned my gaze elsewhere, and that's when I saw it. A small grave, right beside mine. To our beloved daughter. Luna Song, Luna Song. I whispered the name softly. And then, everything exploded in my mind. I never knew Samuel had named that child. That he had made a grave. He never told me. Just. Luna Song, Luna. When you chose that name, what were you thinking? The autumn wind blew, and the dry leaves danced like butterflies. Samuel stood alone in the wind, wrapped entirely in sorrow. Suddenly, I understood. This world no longer had the person he loved, just like I had in the past. He too would live on this way, dragging his steps through memories, whether joyful or painful, surviving alone. Chapter 15. It wasn't just me, everyone noticed Samuel was growing quieter by the day. He was like a dying tree, waiting each day for death to arrive. I often saw him sitting silently by the window, staring at a photo of me. The image was blurry, but you could just make out the peaceful look on the woman's sleeping face. Judging by the background, it was from that time Samuel was hospitalized with a gastric ulcer. He wasn't an easy patient, demanding and inconsiderate, often exhausting me to the point of falling asleep in secret. But once, when I woke up, I caught him in a strange pose. He was leaning close, so close I could hear his breathing. If I lifted my head, I would have brushed against his lips. Startled to see me awake, Samuel quickly backed off and hid his phone behind him. I rarely saw such embarrassment and annoyance on his face. So that's when he took the photo. While he was lost in thought, Mila rubbed up against him. He bent down, scooped her into his arms, eyes lowered in contemplation. After a long time, he sighed. How about Daddy finds you a new home? My heart skipped. So it's finally come. One day, every trace of me would vanish from Samuel's world. And Mila, was only the beginning. The next day, Samuel packed up the litter box and food bowls and gave them to Oliver. Rough as Oliver seemed, he was actually careful and kind. I felt at ease and trusting Mila to him. After that, Samuel returned to the company and made a shocking announcement. He was leaving YL Tech. He was dead set on giving up the company he'd built over 10 years, calmly handing off every responsibility as if leaving a final will. Oliver yelled. Old Lynn pleaded. None of it worked. No one knew what Samuel intended to do. Not even me. I was fading more each day. Without Mila to accompany me, I lay sprawled on the bed, sleeping endlessly. Sometimes Samuel would scribble on paper. I no longer had the energy to look. I figured I'd disappear soon, and that was fine. I was tired. All I wanted was to leave this place and get some real, peaceful sleep. Chapter 16. When the first autumn rain fell, Samuel wasn't sitting in our little apartment staring blankly, like he used to. He answered a call, put on a coat, and retrieved a package from beneath the overpass. Then he went to an abandoned warehouse by the dock and began laying out the contents. A dagger, an axe, plastic sheeting, duct tape. He spent days preparing, and on a moonless, wind-swept night, he used ether to knock out the man who killed me. Last month, Samuel had arranged for his release on medical parole, citing mental illness. Then, using the same method, he abducted Sebastian and Gabriel, forcing them to witness the carnage. Blood sprayed across pale faces, blooming like wicked red flowers at the corners of their eyes. Under the moonlight, Samuel looked like a demon crawling out of a hell made for vengeance. He said, Diana, everyone who hurt you must pay. I sneered. Wasn't the one who hurt me most always you? Soon, Sebastian and his son fainted from terror. Samuel, meanwhile, looked up at the moonlight spilling like silver silk, and smiled as he dropped the bloodied blade. He never intended to kill them, but they would carry that terror forever, living in its shadow. Diana, I've avenged you. Now, can I see you? The wind howled outside. The moon lit the earth. Samuel, met with silence, lit a cigarette for himself. Still not enough, is it? Amid the smoke, he laughed bitterly. Then wait for me. When I get there, I'll take you to see the flowers. Sound good? A chill crept through me, a terrible premonition. I followed him numbly to BH Park. The still surface of the lake rippled as the water slowly swallowed his body. The man on this final journey didn't hesitate. What's the point? I'm already dead. And yet, even now, I couldn't help but feel sorrow. But he couldn't hear me. He kept walking, staggering but resolute, into the deep water. At the same time, I felt myself fading, so faint, a breeze might carry me away. I knew the last thread tying me to the mortal world was about to snap. Wind picked up around me. Before the darkness fell, time seemed to race backward. I saw young Samuel again, leaning by the sycamore tree, carefully tucking an orange-flavored lollipop into his pocket. Then my awareness drifted to the day my mother and I first moved into that narrow alley. A gentle aunt pointed at a little boy not far away, telling me to go play with him. But this time, I shook my head. If a story is fated to end in tragedy, then it's best never to begin. For me, that's true. And for Samuel, too. If I had one selfish wish left, it would be for Luna to be reborn into a good family next time. One where she's warm, well-fed, and most importantly, loved by two people who love each other, who teach her to love herself and to love others. Extra chapter. Oliver rarely suffered from insomnia. That night, after being woken up a third time by Mila, he decided to get out of bed and take a look. When he reached the living room, he found Mila jumping anxiously on the cat tree, clearly uneasy. He thought maybe she still hadn't gotten used to the new home. He gently patted her furry head and went back to sleep. Later, when Oliver recalled Mila's behavior that night, he was certain she had sensed something. Samuel was dead. The man who killed Diana Lou had also died. Oliver had always thought Samuel carried the kind of ruthless energy capable of crossing the line without flinching. He never imagined that, when the time came, Samuel would go even further than he had expected. The day they went to collect Samuel's belongings, Secretary's son went with him. They found a letter hidden in a false drawer. The envelope read, "To Diana, Secretary's son asked what to do with it. Oliver stared at the letter, his eyes gradually growing misty. He sighed and said, "Give it to me. I'll go to the cemetery this afternoon and burn it for Diana." Secretary's son nodded and handed him the letter. They had been classmates for 3 years. Oliver knew Diana fairly well. She spoke softly, always gentle and tender. Sometimes he wondered how someone like Samuel could treat her the way he did. Samuel would deliberately summon her to the office, making sure she witnessed him being affectionate with others. At first, Diana didn't hide her emotions. Just a slight frown would make Samuel lash out, accusing her of delusional fantasies. But later, when Diana started acting indifferent, Samuel was the one who suffered instead. Oliver had seen him get angry just because Diana spoke to someone else. Once, Diana accompanied Samuel to a dinner party, and a spoiled young heir got handsy with her. Samuel, on the surface, said, "President Chan likes her? Fine. Borrow her for a couple of days." But once Diana was gone, he tracked the man down and beat him up in a club. That kind of near-deranged possessiveness, there was no way Samuel didn't love Diana Liu. Even when she attempted suicide, Samuel didn't go see her, but sat in his office all night. When he found out she'd survived, he drank himself into a stupor. From his lips came, one after another, the names Luna and Diana. From these two people, Oliver came to fully understand what it meant to love and destroy in equal measure. He couldn't help but ask, "Why couldn't you two let the past go?" Samuel opened his eyes. Even in his drunken haze, there was a stubborn clarity. "You don't understand, we couldn't. We never could." When he loved, it was searing, intense. When he hated, it was merciless. That kind of personality made him decisive and sharp in business, but dangerously obsessive in love. Oliver could never comprehend how two people, both still alive, both innocent, could be incapable of simply loving each other right. But that question would never be answered. Samuel was gone. That evening, Oliver arrived at the cemetery in front of Diana's grave. He lit the still-sealed letter and burned it. The flames consumed the paper. For a fleeting moment, the light illuminated the inscription on the tombstone. "My wife, Diana Liu, born the day the last willow catkins fell, died the year I loved her most." As for the contents of the letter, perhaps only Diana and Samuel will ever know.